let's crack open the beers first, Steve. I think we need something to drink. Which one would you like to drink first? Because we'll crack open the same and then we can have a discussion about beer.
So this is I've got Impossible Brew.
Yeah, Impossible Brew.
Yeah.
Impossible Brew.
Are they all the same? All the same
No,
Impossible Brews.
Yeah, they're all Impossible Brews. All alcohol free. We've got like these nootropics in.
So this is the Social Blend. Social Blend, and that one is Social Blend.
It's all social.
They're all social blends.
Yeah.
Alright, this one is it's the one in my hand. That's the difference.
This is the lager version.
Cheers.
I find the bigger one. Cheers, Steve. The bigger one, the pale. That's more like an ale.
Yeah.
So this is more like a lager. It's nicer than the one we had the other day at the pub. I think it's got more of a kick to it, more richer flavour.
Really? Is that what you get from it?
Yeah, it's more like
It feels a bit heavy and like yeasty. Brewed in the UK.
it's got hops. Developed with plant scientists and expert brewers.
Based on a Japanese recipe. Dry hopped with sriracha. Is that how you pronounce it? Sriracha.
I don't know. Sriracha Ace.
And extensively conditioned. But it's done in Britain. Is it done by Japanese?
It's done by a guy from Hong Kong.
Okay.
So I found his stuff on Instagram, but I basically posted something where he was on Dragon's Den, and he walked away without getting any investment, despite the Dragons all loving his pitch. The reason behind it was his price point. It's £2.99. So £2.99 just for one of these, and he says like you're gonna get a lot of like novelty buyers. You're not gonna get like repeat buyers for that price point. Because it's just too expensive. But for me, I would buy this. For me, because I like the taste and I like the sort of like the ingredients. So I'm sold on the fancy foods.
Okay.
The fancy superfoods.
So what do you get out of it in terms of, after you've drunk it, other than it tastes nice?
Well, funny enough, I used to drink Lucky Saint, which is unfiltered lager. It's alcohol free as well, but that did something funny to me. I felt like drowsy after drinking it, so I didn't like it. So I bought like a couple of crates. Pardon me. And I just stopped buying it. But when I drink this, I don't feel drowsy afterwards, and that's how they advertise it. They said that the ingredients they designed to give you make you relax without making you feel drowsy.
Already I feel a sense of calm.
But maybe that's just like suggestion, because the marketing is working on you. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah. It could very well be the placebo effect and the way you're talking to me.
Okay. It's my marketing.
Suddenly I feel calm.
By the way, I'm not affiliated with this company. I saw the guy was Asian and I thought I'll help a fellow Asian out, plugging his stuff. But I'm sure I'll put like a link to his £5 discount link or something. I'm going to get a £5 discount if you guys buy any.
I'll be honest, the first sip I had of this, I thought it was too bitter for me. I didn't like it. And yet you still me carrying drinking it and I said the word nice. Because I've got to drink all of it. And I just felt this sense I've got to, enjoy. I can't pass make off until I know for sure. And the more I'm drinking it, the more it's almost I'm adapting to it. Like it began bitter, and now it's not as bitter. Maybe my taste buds have just adapted to it. Maybe I've just had something really sweet, or my taste buds are used to something else. But yeah, this is what's the word? Moorish. You can continue to drink it, and it's not going to have that sour taste I get with beer, for example. I can drink a fresh beer, like a sharp beer, alcohol, and I can enjoy that because it's refreshing, it's sharp, it sort of hits the back of my throat, it's quenching, but I can't drink it continuously because I find this sour taste in my mouth just sort of lingers more and more, whereas this is almost the opposite. It began really sharp and bitter, now it's kind of settling off.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. It's I find it sits after you drank it, you just leave your mouth a bit. It's got this sort of like sweet bitter aftertaste to it, which I quite like.
Yeah, that's funny actually you say that, because when I was in Hong Kong, I was introduced to durian fruits, and this guy said to me, "You don't just put durian fruit in your mouth and you just eat it like a normal fruit. If you having it for the first time, you take that first sip or the first bite, like a small amount, and let it sit in your mouth. Exactly those words you said. Let it sit in the mouth and just take your time with it, because it's strong. It's smelly. Durian fruit is one of those fruits. You're not supposed to be allowed to have it distributed on main flights or something. It's, it's so smelly,
durian smelly. Yeah, it tastes like onion for me.
It does, yeah.
Yeah,
Onion, custard, garlic. These flavors sort of coming to the fore, but I like it. I liked it.
Like it. And for me, bitterness. I don't mind bitterness in beer because when I was a kid, I spoke to my dad and I said to him, "Dad, why do you like beer? It's so bitter." And he said, "Because life is bitter."
Is that what he said? Life is bitter.
Life is bitter.
Did you question him more on that?
No, it's just like, ugh, that's some dark adult shit. I don't want to get involved.
That's some dark adult shit.
Yeah. Anyway, I should introduce my guest for today. So today I've got Steve. Steve is I call him my witch doctor because I always talk to him about like different like foods, how they affect the body, like supplements, these kind of things. And I think of him like as a tortured artist because he's a musician and he's always trying to get his art out there. So that's very much how I see him. But we actually met on a contract. I was working. I applied for a contract with Santander, and Steve was my interviewer. He was my boss, man on top. So Steve, do you want to just introduce a little bit about yourself and what are you about, and have as much leeway to just say whatever.
Great, thank you. Like you said, I mean, we met at Santander. I was impressed at the speed with which you responded to the questions I come up with. As a mixture of techie kind of front end stuff, but you just bang, bang, bang. You're like, okay, I immediately knew that I had to hire you, and then we just got on. But I wouldn't say I was necessarily your boss. I mean, my boss, David, who was the manager of the team, was the boss. I only filled in as a recruiter to help get an extra person on the team. But what have we done since then? I mean, we hung out, we chatted, we had lunch together and stuff, and then obviously talked code, but went into other stuff because you talked about your past as well, your family a little bit, and then at the time, I remember now because I had recently been diagnosed with lymphoma, and that was on my head, and I was carrying that weight, and you were going to stuff with your daughter, so.
Yeah, I was going through court case with my ex to have access to my daughter then. So I think we both sort of connected on that as well because we've both got like kids and we're separated from our ex-partners, so that's one thing we've connected on in the past. Obviously code, we're both contractors, we both work as web developers, and I think just generally we're both into like self-development, so so a little question I like to ask everyone is about life, so it's sort of like just a sort of get a glimpse into how they see the world. So if I asked you, life is, I want you to finish the sentence, so a sentence completion.
Depend on my mood on the day how I'd answer it.
Okay.
But today I remember answering you this, and I said, it's like a parallel collection of stories that intertwined with each other. It's life is stories.
So it's like stories of different lives, right? Different people in their lives.
My own life with interacting with others. So, I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, there are lots of different ways you can look at life. It's good, it's bad, but it's still a story, isn't it? Always seems to be a journey from an intention, a motivation to want something, because life is it's alive. It's not. If it was dead, there wouldn't be any story. There wouldn't be any movement. There wouldn't be any I mean, I suppose you could argue in death there is a cycle, but I wouldn't be alive to experience it unless you go into that other domain of the spirit, and whether or not my body dies and my energy and all of that continues to live on is another matter. But yeah, for me, I suppose life is a collection of stories.
Nice. So I want to go like how I want to structure this is sort of talk about different things like what I tend to like sort of segregate the aspects of my life is I always see it in terms of health, wealth, and relationships, and maybe like spirituality. That's what you're into as well. So I was just wanting to sort of like go through different pillars and stuff and see like your experiences, your attitudes, your thoughts on different things. So take health. So that's an obvious one for you. Do you just want to go a little bit into the story about your experiences with health and how you've dealt with certain issues?
Yeah, I suppose for me it started a long time ago because my mum had a multiple sclerosis, and when I was born, she had meningitis. So I think I needed to be looked after by my auntie for a couple of weeks while she's been getting better. And I think maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years actually, in my early childhood, I didn't notice anything. Obviously, I was young and I don't really remember that far back. But I think she, following up with doctors and things, she found out she had MS. I think she got diagnosed when I was about 4 or 5 or something. And she got progressively worse. I mean, she got it really bad. And I took an interest in health at that point because I realised, it mattered a lot, looking after her. And I researched stuff at a young age. I remember having a science class. I must have been 11 or 12, and a science teacher said something about how nutrition affects our bodies. So I took an interest at that point. He said something about, if you eat bread at night or something, it can help you sleep. It's taken me a long time to realise why that works, but then I had issues with IBS, digestive issues, probably from consuming too much in life and enjoying and indulging. My brother would go out and get a curry, come back and offer it to me, and I'd eat late into the night and overeat too much. I was never fat, not really, but I did overeat, and I'd say I have an unhealthy relationship with food, or I did, and it took me a long time to acknowledge that actually is an issue, because it was I think a lot of that drove my IBS, the digestive issues I had. So I forgot about it. I think I got on with life and did stuff, and then it wasn't long before I met you, I got diagnosed with lymphoma. It's a slow blood cancer, and
so it's in the blood, it's in the lymph system, is that?
Yeah, it sounds confusing, doesn't it? Because there are so many different types of blood cancers, leukemia. But yes, in this particular case, the one I have is called follicular lymphoma. So it's in the lymph system, and it's around the body. And when you get diagnosed, it's very rare to get diagnosed at stage 1. Most people get diagnosed at stage 4 because you don't know you've got it. You live life normally, and it's not obtrusive. It's not in your way, and so you notice like a lump in your neck or something, and that's commonly where it'll appear. Some people get it in their groin or their armpit, but I mean, how many people really look at their armpits and I've got a lump there? You don't really feel that.
Yeah.
I just got out of a very difficult relationship with someone. I moved back into my property, and I sat back on the sofa, and what's this on my neck? Was it that side or this side? I think it was this side actually. I felt a lump, and freaked me out a bit, and then I went to the doctors. I got seen quite quickly. I think it was that week, on a Friday. Then they referred me, had an ultrasound, and the ultrasound just indicated that I had lots of lymph, big. It didn't prove diagnosis. I had to get a biopsy of the lymph node to prove if it was cancerous or something. I had another blood test to see if it was cancer in the blood, and it turned out, I did a bit of research myself. I didn't want to get a full biopsy of like the whole lump taken out, because I read that can trigger lymphedema, and whether I had cancer or not, I didn't want that. So I found this thing called where you can have a needle biopsy, where they just take a very small bit out of the lump, and I think begrudgingly the doctors agreed, but it did prove that I had lymphoma, and that's when I got the diagnosis. I was called into the office, and there's this young doctor, and there's 2 nurses. They came in, and I knew something wasn't going to be right, because it's almost like they'd prepared. One doctor can't tell you you've got cancer. You've got to have an entourage to support you and support the doctor, because you're the doctor giving the news to someone, you got cancer. Got to deliver that in a way that's sensitive. So I felt for the guy, but I knew something wasn't right, and the tension in me and the anxiety was building up. Oh my god, he didn't deliver it well. I'll admit it was. You've got cancer. It was like in his kind of, you got this lymph. No, it wasn't like that. It was like.
I'll just be like, fuck off, mate.
Am I in the right office? It was suddenly you don't. It feels strange, like you're thrown into this whole new world. But I looked into it, and it took a bit of time to finally get to see the oncologist, because he wasn't the oncologist. There's like a referral system that goes on between the different departments, and then I had to have various tests and things, and then eventually I saw the oncologist like several months later. It was around Christmas time, and like he was quite full on, like, we're going to get you ready for treatment and all this stuff. How do you feel? And it felt a bit. I almost felt like he was a bit of a bully, actually, the way he pushed it.
He's trying to force his medicine on you, basically.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, that's the medicine that's the mainstream medicine that's provided. I mean, yes. I don't. At the time, I questioned it. I did, because I wasn't confident about taking any kind of chemotherapy. I was always conscious of my body after experimenting in the past with diets and my IBS issues with my mum, and I was conscious that any poisons in my body would be bad. But at the same time, I've got cancer, so how do you deal with that? But I wasn't ready to take chemotherapy, and for a couple of weeks, I had to go back every week for testing, and just to see how I was, because I've been diagnosed with stage 4. I should make that point. Stage 4 cancer.
So what are the different stages? Can you just go through and explain?
The thing, you hear stage 4 cancer. A lot of people, it sounds like terminal.
Yeah, I'm freaking out when you say stage 4. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. Because if I didn't even mention the stage, you just got cancer. Because what could that
making
mean?
me emotionally drink now.
Yeah. That's all right.
Slow down.
Yeah. Stage 4 is when it's all around the body. Stage 1 is where it's isolated into one space.
Okay.
But let's not get confused about stages, because if you have an aggressive cancer and it's growing fast, and it's
stage 1 could be bad, right? If it's aggressive.
Yes, it can be, but you can chop it off or have whatever chemotherapy. It reduces it to the point where it's not evident. They call it no evidence of disease. No evidence of disease. So that's NED. No evidence of. Well, it should be called NEOD, like the short NOED, but it's NED. Right? They don't say you're cured. You can't be cured, because cancer isn't really cured. There's just no evidence of disease. So it's nice. That's what you want. Remission, no evidence of disease. You don't want the word relapse coming up. And they're the key words, the buzzwords you think when you're getting diagnosed or you're having conversations with someone, because you're overwhelmed with all this information. The key words that sort of come in your mind and kind of you hold on to it. It's a mantra and you want to repeat it, bang, bang, bang. Relapse. Like, is that good or is that bad? Remission, because they're both begin with R. Your mind's working 100 miles an hour. So, yeah, I was a bit overwhelmed, I'll be honest. And I did a lot of research. I didn't want to do the chemotherapy. And they were, the nurses, the doctors were worried. They're worried. I think they're worried because they thought I was mentally ill or something. Because everyone just accepts what the doctors say. They go with it. And in this country, we're blessed with the NHS and it's free. I mean, in America, where you're paying for a service, I suppose you would want to take whatever advice is given to you. Because, it's free here. So why not accept it? And then literally went for a couple of months. I didn't want to do the chemotherapy. I found out that follicular lymphoma, this cancer that I have, is not aggressive. It's slow. It's very slow. It can grow. It can take 20 years before it even becomes a problem. It's your lumps grow, basically. I might have it in my groin area. Might feel pain, might not. Maybe one day I might have some other symptom. It might be like I had this thing. What do you call it? Bell's palsy, where you kind of one side of your face droops. I think Justin Bieber has something like that, or had it. that's like that's a problem. But is it the cancer, or is that just its own thing? But it could be, because it could be a lymph that's pressing on a nerve or something like that. I suspect that's what it was. So yeah. Anyway, for a couple of years, talking about health, I went through this phase where I just didn't want to do the chemotherapy. Didn't have any treatment with the doctors. I just wanted to see how I could just function and survive. And like in my mind, I just needed to know that I could carry on. And I think I proved it. I didn't need to do that for 2 years, but it's only around 2020 that I decided, let's just go with let's have some therapy, because there were other therapies offered for this. There was chemotherapy and or rituximab, which is an immunotherapy, and it's in itself, rituximab can be very effective for this type of cancer. It can shrink all the lymph nodes down. And I didn't really have any symptomatic problems. Typically with this cancer, you'd wake up at night with a night sweat every night, and you'd lose a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I didn't lose much weight. No, I'll take that back. I did lose weight, but that was because of the diets I was on. I tried all these experimental diets. I feel like I'm losing myself, like one subject to another. But
no, just diversions are good.
Yeah, I spent so long and trying this diet and that diet, really as a management strategy, just to see if I could, I suppose naively and ignorantly and arrogantly maybe, thinking that I could overcome the cancer. But the truth is... Is it still there?
Yeah, no, it is. Sorry, mate.
That's right.
Just checking the sound's working still. Yeah, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I think arrogantly I assumed that I could overcome the cancer. But I think realistically, I was just overcoming it in my mind, knowing that I could live and find some peace. And for 2 years I didn't have any treatments or anything. And then I decided to have the rituximab, because I had such digestive pains. I thought it might be related to the lymphoma. Maybe it's blocking my intestine or something. And they did a scan, and I had quite big nodes. When they first scanned me, when I got diagnosed, I had a lymph node, which is like 11 centimeters or something. 11 centimeters is quite big. Imagine a lump that size in your body that isn't there. So it's affecting things. Although you're not symptomatic, it's subtle. So anyway, I had this treatment. A couple of months later, my nodes had shrunk down like to 1 or 2 centimeters or something. So what we call that is a partial success. It wasn't a complete response, but a partial, but it was significant. And everyone was pleased, surprised actually. So I'd not had anything for 2 years, no treatments, and then I had this thing, rituximab. So why didn't I do that in the beginning? I went on my own journey, my own kind of mental journey, and that could have been the answer at the very beginning. And that was 2020, 21 or something. Mm-hmm. So nearly 2 years have gone since then, and I've just had regular checkups, and I haven't had any symptoms that I've noticed. But it doesn't mean I don't have the cancer. It's still there. I still have follicular lymphoma. And it's considered an incurable cancer because you just have regular treatments, or have treatments as often as you need them to shrink the things down, or if it's a problem in life. And often people will do this thing called watch and wait, where they just wait for it to get worse, or they just live their lives, or whatever. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm living my life, and I see it as not really cancer in the sense that people think what cancer is. It's more like a chronic illness.
Yeah.
That isn't affecting me right now. I'm not symptomatic, not that I'm aware of. So I'm conscious of it, and having done so much research around nutrition, and I've tried different diets and things. I've learned many other things, like I've lost weight and things. I've learned about blood sugar and calming things, what stimulates energy, all these different things, what foods are potentially poisonous, the things we take for granted every day. You think you eat an apple, is it healthy? More than likely it's not. You're probably healthier eating what's considered unhealthy stuff, all the processed stuff, just because the amount of pesticides that's in fruits and things. All this like random stuff that I've learned along the way. So I guess when you always ask, like, is this food, is that food good? You can get deep into it. You really can. I mean, a lot of nutritionists may promote certain biases. They may say this is the thing to have for most people. And more often than not, they're probably right. But most people don't realise that if you're vegetarian or vegan, there are bigger risks associated with the toxins that come with those foods. and it isn't the foods, it's how they're grown in the modern world. And if you can afford to be vegan and have everything organic and be careful about minimizing, because even the organic stuff has pesticides in it. How much?
Yeah, it's like it's impossible to avoid, really.
Yeah, and it's the level, isn't it? So, are you doing it about health? Are you doing it for environmentally friendly reasons? But I've learned a lot of stuff along the way.
Yeah, yeah. So this is why I call Steve my witch doctor, because he's just like, he's so well read on all these things. I just need to like, instead of me, it's like a little shortcut for me. It's like, instead of me doing all the research, I just be like, Steve, what are potatoes like? You're like, oh, potatoes are like the dirty dozen, mate. I'm like, oh shit.
There you go. You remember?
Yeah,
that.
I still remember.
You remember that?
I was like, Jesus Christ, what can I actually eat?
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
You take your own journey with that, and you find what works for you.
Yeah, for me, like, I try and buy organic as much as possible, but then sometimes you just can't get hold of it. Also, when you're eating out, you don't know what they put in there, so
Yeah, I mean, it's not realistic. It's not sociable.
it's not sociable.
Most people will eat whatever's available.
Yeah,
And it's expensive.
it is expensive. Yeah, even like for me, my meats, most of the meats I buy, I don't buy from the supermarket. I buy from like an online butcher. They're called pharmacists, and they just all their meats are like grass fed, so they really care about like animal welfare and stuff. So I tend to buy like grass fed beef from them. There's another one called like Field and Flour. I have a subscription to them as well. Send me like boxes of meat every so often. You know, never know when it's gonna come. They just send me an email like 3 days before.
What's it called?
Field and Flour. So they're the same principle as pharmacists. They're basically, it's all grass fed. It's a little bit cheaper for some cuts of meat. Like, I tend to buy a lot of the same things, like ox cheeks. I quite like ox cheeks, braised ox cheeks. Tend to like bavette steak, côte de bœuf.
Sounds very fancy.
I eat well, Steve. I eat well. You know.
You look like you eat well, and I don't mean that like you're fat. I mean, you look healthy.
Yeah.
And I did notice the recipe you had in your restaurant, in your kitchen. Because it certainly was a restaurant. You know, you fed me this amazing omelette. So thank you for that.
No worries. Share the will.
Yeah. But yeah, I noticed the bavette and radish. Was it? I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a recipe for bavette steak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different things. One thing I'm trying to master right now is braised ox cheeks, because I first had ox cheeks in Croatia, and it was amazing. I went to a restaurant, so ox cheeks. It's like, oh yeah, it's a speciality around here. So I ordered it, and I was like, the best meal I've ever had. It was like served with pasta, but it had this. It didn't have a pasta sauce. It had like this like brown kind of, very like rich, earthy, beefy kind of sauce to it. And I've been trying to replicate the taste ever since, but I just haven't managed it. But I found this video on TikTok, and I'm like, I think it's pretty close, so I'm gonna try it.
So it's a bit like a collagen type beef broth with like meaty flavors, not diluted down, broken, and opened up into get all those tastes going, flowing in your mouth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So where are you at right now? How do you deal with health? Because I spoke to you earlier. You said you like drinking wine and having cheese, and what's happened, Steve, since all your health crusade?
Yeah. I lost myself in arguments. I think I found myself arguing a lot online. Actually, there's a Facebook group that I'd set up originally for lymphoma, and it'd grown. It's about 1,000 members, and there was a mixture of people in there. A lot of people from America, and all of them struggling with their own health problems. But it was almost cult-like. I think people were quite extreme in their views, and I was too, I think. And I didn't like myself. I spent so much time on there, constantly checking it. And I wanted to live life again. I didn't want to be this virtual life. And on this extreme vegan diet that I was on, I did a Gerson diet. Only for a short period of time. It wasn't practical. I found I got too depressed on it. It didn't work for me, unfortunately. It didn't work for me to sustain. I didn't have the endurance for it. It's not to say it's wrong or anything, but I didn't like who I became. So I came away from it. I came off the website. I just removed myself from it, and I handed over ownership to another guy who I thought he was better than me anyway. He'd written his own book, or was in the process of writing his own book on the subject anyway. So I wanted to live life a bit, and I didn't want to be so extreme. I wanted to get out, socialise and live life. Life isn't necessarily about... I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of the suffering, really, more than anything else. And I'm lucky. I think I realised after a couple of years and after having that treatment, where my energy got better, I was able to live life and appreciate and be grateful. So it's difficult being strict with your diet and the people around you, and that mattered to me more. And I'm conscious. I listened to my body, and my issue really wasn't about the cancer. It was about IBS issues. I got such extreme IBS issues that I learned how to deal with that by keeping a diary, and that's how I overcome it. So I'm able to eat the foods that you would consider unhealthy, I think, because I've allowed my body to adapt to eating those foods in balance. It's not to say I agree with it's healthy. I don't think it is. I think I eat too much fat. My cholesterol level is really high, and there's different schools of thought on that, but likely that's going to be my tendency for heart issues later down the line. But cancer is kind of more pressing, and I just want to live life a bit, so I balance it out. I do exercise, and I try to eat what feels good, but I'm acknowledging if I get a bit of a belly, or if I I don't know, I might do a test every now and again, a blood test, and then I think it's a bit higher, then I'll level off. And it's a lot of it is to do with motivation. I don't have that willpower that I had then. It came like that. And I go through phases now where my willpower will come back a little bit, and I might be a bit more strict again.
Yeah, because the thing is about willpower is like a limiting resource, isn't it? The more you use will, as you're using it, you're expending it. So this is why I think sometimes when you set yourself like a certain target or goal, you repeatedly fail at it. Or say with food as well. Like I've had like different relationship with food as well. Sometimes I'm just like really restrictive. Like I've done like intermittent fasting, different kinds of diets and stuff, and then restricting different food groups and stuff. And then I just end up like splurging on the food at some point. Like I was a vegetarian for like 2 years.
Really?
And then one day I just picked up a piece of corned beef and ate it, and I never looked back. And that was it. So for me, like now, like say this year, I want to reduce my alcohol intake, but I'm never going to say to myself, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to set the intention that I'm going to drink less, but I don't want to set a rule for myself, because then you feel awful if you break it, right? You just do your best, set the intention there, and then, and also sometimes you got to like sort of like drink and stuff just to, I think sometimes it's good to even do that with awareness, because then what happens is you can like see how it does to you. If you do it, drink wine with awareness or drink beer with awareness, and you really feel the effects of your body, you're like, actually I don't really want to do this anymore. You naturally it just drops off. That's why it's a counterintuitive way of giving up smoking. I've heard that people who learn how to meditate, I heard a story about this chap. He was like, I just I didn't try to give up smoking. I just started smoking with awareness. I just really got into like every aspect of like smoking, and become like really intimately aware of what was happening to his body as he smoked. And he was just realised, actually I don't really like it. It was like he was like messing up his body completely, and when he really tuned into his body, he could feel everything. So is that sort of something how you would approach things as well with like food and diet and stuff now?
Yeah,
something similar.
I mean, when I mentioned about listening to my body, I don't think I did it enough, and I think some people do it automatically and take it for granted. Like I'm in awe of the people that they'll have a meal, and maybe they'll even eat half of the plate or something. Then that's it. They're comfortable with that. Yeah, they've enjoyed it, but they haven't got this like I've got this mouth that just wants to go nom, and they settle with that like internally in their body. That's enough for them. That brings them the pleasure. I think I have a tendency to overeat, and that's my weakness, my indulgence, and I'm aware of it. But I've listened to my body more now, so I care more about how I feel. If if I want to go for a run, if I want to have some energy, if I want to sleep, if I want to be sociable. It's hard for me to be sociable and eat, I'll be honest, because a lot of the time, we went to a restaurant last week, right? So you had this buffet, and I overate. And it might not have just been that; it might have been the foods, and I was uncomfortable for a couple of hours afterwards. So I'm conscious of that. But
I was uncomfortable the next day, mate. I was like all blocked up. I was like,
So-
I ate too much meat. I was just like, actually, this wasn't that enjoyable. Actually, I probably would have been better if we just went to a restaurant, paid the same amount of price for less food. You know,
There is that, but then there's the temptation, and it's not just the buffet; it's the social situation. There's subtle anxieties that we take for granted in having the conversations and having a bit of food to fill that gap of silence, or not being sure, where you fit comfortably, and if you can sit with it in an uncomfortable situation. Sometimes it isn't, sometimes it is. Like, I like being in social situations, but it's the things I take. You don't realise, how often do you listen to yourself? Like, I'm conscious of my body, how I feel. There's the pain. The pain's right there, but I didn't know it was there until now, because I'm focusing on it. And actually, that pain is affecting the way I'm talking. It's the way it's my voice, and there's a little variation in my voice. I'm compensating, all these things. So I listen to my body more. I'm not an expert, but I keep a diary of the things I eat, so that enables me to, I think, appreciate all this other delicious food.
So you're gonna put what we ate earlier down. So what's it? Mackerel in olive oil, eggs. I think it's like 2.5 eggs each, small
Indeed.
ones.
Yeah.
With Gouda cheese.
Yep.
And onion. There's onion in there. I didn't salt and pepper it actually. The Gouda was salt and pepper.
I won't go into that detail. It's more about I'm looking for things that trigger the IBS.
Okay.
But and not more often than not, it's not meats, it's not eggs, it's not fats. Sometimes it is. It's more nuts and lentils, and if I eat fast. If I have a really fatty meal, then maybe. But we'd been for a run. I hadn't eaten much in the morning. It was an omelette with cheese. I don't have a problem with dairy, so some people do. I have more problems with grains and fibres.
It's good to have eggs in the morning, I find. It really sets me up for the day. I've experimented with different things and stuff, but because a lot of days what I'll do, I'll skip breakfast and just fast until, say, lunch, or in extreme, like late afternoon or dinner. But I just find that, like, I'm very grouchy throughout the day, and I just don't have any energy to do anything. Whereas if I eat something like protein in the morning, just have a good breakfast, it does really set me up. I get more stuff done, just like have more energy to do things.
I'm the opposite.
You're the opposite.
The more I eat, the more grouchy I get.
Yeah, you get grouchy from eating.
Because it's too much is sitting on me, and it's uncomfortable. So therefore, it's pain. It's very subtle. If I don't eat much at all, if I drink water, it's like I get more energy. I think I might have forgive the saying, I have a constipation as well. I get that, and I think if I drink more water, if I don't eat as much, it creates this gap more in the food cycles, and it actually is better for the digestive cycle, and my energy is just better. So it's less taxing on my digestive system, but it's not. We're all different, right? Like, your digestive system may work in such a way where you don't get that energy. You maybe feel fatigued and depleted because of that. So it works for you, and we all have our own unique microbiome, so it's all going to work differently. But yeah, I mean, there's no right and wrong. It's just about what's right for your body at the time. What do you need? What helps you?
Yeah, I feel like I sometimes feel like my body's like I feel like if I was like a vehicle, I'd be like a tank. I'd do like 1 mile to the gallon or something. Okay. Something ridiculous like that. Because like if I am sometimes, like, even when we were doing the running earlier, I felt like I was going to pass out.
Well, you did push it.
Yeah, after I got to the top of the hill, because I don't like to run slow, and then I push it, and then I expend my energy very fast.
Yeah.
And I feel like my body can't keep up with the demands. So then I start feeling like lightheaded. I'm like, ooh. And it's happened to me at school before. Like, some days when I've skipped breakfast, I end up like passing out in the sports field.
So the extra food, if it's fattening as well, that's going to give you that sustain of energy, right?
Yeah. I guess perhaps a running strategy for me would probably be to like not push it, just run it slow until, like, run for like 20 whole minutes and let the fat reserves kick in, and then start pushing it. Because I think that run we did earlier, where it was like just under 4K, I don't think my body has the time to kick into the fat reserves yet.
No, it takes time. It takes 20
takes
minutes,
time.
half an hour or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I guess just need to like leave it for a bit longer and just unaddict myself from burning cheap carbohydrates, you know.
I'm the same, and you're right. I mean, that's exactly what it does. It burns off the glycogen, doesn't it? When you're running
Yeah.
or any kind of cardio exercise, high intensity will burn off that. Anything the heart rate is above a certain threshold. My problem is the same. And when I started running a couple of years, about a year ago actually, I started running, and only probably in the last this year I've been ramping up my running a lot more. But I've realised my tendency to overexert myself in everything I do, like full on 100% full steam. My heart rate is testament to that, because when I look at my look at this Garmin Forerunner 45 watch, it's, you know, you get it £50 on eBay. It's the sort of the bare minimum, and it's brilliant because it just it shows me that I've got, when I hook up with my app, my Garmin app, it says your heart rate is constantly in a high intensity zone, mostly like 100, I'd say 90 to 100% of my runs. And you think, if I'm doing like a long run and I'm running at a high pace for an hour and a half, that explains why I'm getting these injuries in my ankles and knees and things. It probably explains the friction I'm getting, not just in exercise, but with people, with conversations and arguments and expectations and standards I set for myself. I overexert to the point where other people, it causes friction because they're not used to it. I need to slow that down, and that helps me. It's hard to do because I'm like you, like I want to expend that energy and then I burn myself out. So I'm learning to slow myself down, but it's hard because it's not what I'm used to.
All right, Steve, are you finished with that drink?
It's all right, actually. Nearly, yeah.
Are you ready to move on to the next one? I'm excited for you to try this one, the hazy pale.
Okay. It's a bit less yeasty, a little bit full up, so but I'll go slow. Is it this one?
Slow. Yeah, just sip it.
Non-alc hazy pale.
Yeah. It's got the same kind of ingredients, just tastes different. I prefer this one. My friend Lenka, I let her try both, and she prefers that one. So it's individual preference, really.
It's kind of citrusy, isn't it? Citrus yeasty. You don't really notice the other ingredients in it, like the nutritional value. Pardon me.
Oh, spilled it all over myself. Making you gassy, Steve.
My ex-girlfriend would be like, "Oh, you're a messy pup!" Like as loud as it could be. Like, okay,
you're a messy pup.
That lady over there, didn't you?
You're a messy pup.
Yeah, well, it's just loud. You know, she just made everyone aware of the fact that I just soiled myself, or whatever.
I just like, you got done right. I'm a messy pup.
Enhanced Pale is the first alcohol-free beer of its kind.
This one's got like a grapefruit taste to it for me.
I think this is the thing where I would get into arguments with people and stuff because, you know, it's the things we take for granted, right? This is alcohol. Well, it's not alcohol, right? It's in a tin. I suspect aluminium. And it's probably got some kind of sealant on the inside because you don't really want to drink out of a container that's made of aluminium because it leaches.
Do you want a glass?
Oh, no, it's in there. It's not making a difference. I'm just saying, like,
okay.
This is all about being healthy, right? It's about, you know, one of its kind. And it's got these individual ingredients in to help be therapeutic. But, so the conversation I had earlier, like, it's got contrasting ingredients. It's got a vitamin B1. That's one of the ingredients. It's like, yeah, vitamin B1. So at the very end, though, I don't know how much is in it. It doesn't actually tell you. It just says social blend, 375 milligrams. So you don't know. But it could be a very small dose. So for all we know, the doses in this are so small that it's really insignificant. But if they do matter, L-theanine is a sedative, ginseng is a stimulant, lemon balm extract is also sedative, but it's like an antibacterial for herpes, actually.
Right, that's a new beer, new topic. Let's talk about wealth, money, wealth. What can you tell me on the wealth dimension for Steve?
It's kind of related to health, really, but isn't. When I was, I said my mum had MS when I was younger, and it was a traumatic childhood experience because my dad, and my mum, you know, they had their struggles with her illness, and he wasn't emotionally available. I would say, he was quite an angry guy. I mean, he took us out. So he didn't, ignore us or neglect us. Like, we did family stuff, but it was under the strain of this stress that was between my mum and my dad. I mean, obviously she had a condition, but it was deeper than that. And I was miserable as a child. I wanted to get out of that house. I guess as soon as I could, I wanted to get a career, just something where I could afford to live and survive. So in terms of wealth, this answers the question. I wanted to have wealth. I wasn't content to just have enough. And also my mum's sickness, I realised, maybe I didn't realise, maybe just instinctively, I wanted to have more flexibility. I didn't want to be dependent on a difficult situation where I'm almost a prisoner of my own body, or I'm supported by people that can't or aren't looking after me the way I want to look after. I don't think my mum was looked after in the way that was good for her, but at the same time, isn't my dad's fault or anything, or the mainstream medicine at the time. None of it could have really helped her. But I wanted to have more wealth in order for myself to cope with problems and stuff. So I pursued art initially. I wanted to be an actor. I also wanted to be a musician. I also wanted to be an artist. So, and then I went into art at college, and then I went into computer art because I thought I could bring the skills together. But around the age of about 17 or 18, I was doing airbrush spray painting, and I would say I was pretty good at it. I probably, at that point in my life, I could have pursued that and maybe even set up a business in spray painting. Like the kind of stuff you see on the side of walls that, who's that famous artist that nobody knows who it actually is. He does these pictures on walls and things. It's terrible that I don't remember his name. It's the beer. That's it. My brain's gone now. Right. What's his name? Anyway, spray painting. I suppose the stuff I did is a little bit more realistic, but I didn't want to do it straight away. I thought I'd go to college, university, and I'd see if I could, expand further. I could always come back to it. And I went into computer art. I learned how to program when I left university, and then I thought, no, now I want to do music, but I need music equipment, because I used to play keyboard, and I decided to. Web development looked like a good thing at the time. Web design, web programming. Because I could earn loads of money doing that, and then eventually I could invest into all this music stuff. So I got a job as an assistant, web assistant, and that wasn't easy. I had to pursue, but I stuck with one career path, so to speak. And I thought, right, I'd focus on this and I'd get good at it. And I spent years and years learning the basics of JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and getting into front-end web development. So it's kind of like fake programming initially. You do get more into programming. There is more programming than people think there is. A lot of the, hardcore computer scientists will call it coloring inners. We're people that color in if you're a front end designer. But it takes a lot of thinking, because you've got to get your hands dirty with CSS and styling and all these different browsers that couldn't work the same. Back in the day, it was Internet Explorer 5 and Firefox, and no, Firefox wasn't around, it was Netscape, and then those different browsers are competing with each other. So you had to dabble with the CSS, you have to play with it until you made it work the same in all these different browsers. So it wasn't as simple as those, computer science.
And also, there's something to be said that, like, actually a lot of interfaces on websites are shit. This is actually, I worked out with this, like, utility warehouse, right? I'm actually probably going to be paying more because they worked it out, and I think I'll be paying more based on, like, my average usage, because they base it off the estimated usage which the British Gas give you, and I'm going to be paying more. But when I was on the sales call with the Cat, who was part of UW, I was so annoyed by the British Gas website because they changed everything. I couldn't find anything, and it was so unintuitive. I was just like, yeah, fuck it. Even if it's going to cost me more, I'm changing because I'm annoyed at their UI.
Well, yeah, the things we take for granted, right?
Yeah, literally, honestly, like, I just want things to work, and I find a lot of companies, they hire like full stack developers, and that generally means there's a back end developer who knows a bit of front end, and then you get like some god awful UI, because like they don't know there is an art to making interfaces usable for people.
Absolutely.
And then even on a deeper level, making it usable for like screen readers. People don't generally consider that.
Indeed.
People use like divs as buttons. It's like, why are you using a fucking div as a button?
And well, yeah.
It's like tech talk.
It is tech talk, but on the premise of wealth, let's put it this way: when you get into programming on any level, whether you're a Java developer, whether you're a system administrator, if you know computers, the money is good.
There's
It
money,
continues to
there's
expand
money.
and grow the more you get good at it. So wealth, I was lucky. I chose a path, obviously organically, because I wasn't entirely sure that's what I wanted to do, and I earn good money now. But going back to the point about health, the reason I mentioned my mum and why I care about health, since I got this diagnosis, I think a lot of the investment of money that I earn from my job, it's not as simple as you earn more, you're more wealthy. It goes into something.
Yeah, you spend more as well, don't you?
If you're a family member and you care about one thing, like I care about health, I spend a fortune on supplements and organic foods, and I cook a lot, and I do put money into my house as well, but it goes into something. It's a never-ending pit. And with this condition, I get tired sometimes. I don't want to work full-time 100%. As a guy said to me the other day, as a phrase, forgive this, I don't swear very often, but he says, what does work as fuck pay? Because you should get paid more money if you're going to be working 100%. And back in the day, I worked solidly, like I was full on. When you came to San Jose, I was like that. Not so much now. I pace myself, but I don't think I don't care so much about the wealth now. It's like the money's good, and I'm spending it on the house, and it's going to run out, and I'm going to struggle for energy and work, and it's a cycle. So I don't. It's enough. I'm sufficient. If anything, I should probably put some money away and start saving it. It's another thing I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, if we think in terms of health, wealth, relationships, health and wealth has always been alright for me. I've never really struggled too much. I've never really been really ill. In terms of wealth, I was on the dole for a bit. So basically, my story: I dropped out of uni. I went to university. I studied English literature because I enjoyed the discussions at school. Actually, there's a little flip-flopping here, because I studied at A levels. I did economics, maths, and English. So I got 3 A levels, and I enjoyed both. So economics and English most. So initially I applied to do economics, but I didn't have very good grades. So for my AS levels, I initially retook all my modules and I got good grades at the end. But I couldn't get into the best universities. But I still got into decent universities. I got into Bristol and stuff, and got into Bath University for economics. But then I thought, maybe I'll take a year out and then I'll apply to study English instead. So I took a year out, applied to study English, and then I went to Durham to do English. But then I didn't really enjoy the course, hardly any contact hours, and it was basically just usual time and just read all these books and stuff, and then go in. You have 6 contact hours a week, including lectures. So I was like, this is shit. This is what I'm paying my money for. So I switched to natural sciences after 2 terms, and I ended up
in Durham still.
In Durham still, and I couldn't catch up with the workload because everyone's already done 2 terms worth of work, and I had to cram everything into the 3rd term. So I ended up failing my first year. So I retook the modules which I failed, and I managed to pass. But in the 2nd year, I just couldn't find the motivation to work. So I ended up partying too much, not doing my work, and then I failed the 2nd year, and then I had to drop out. So I dropped out, and then I was just working shitty jobs, restaurant work. I was working as a flyer for a restaurant in Durham called Celador. So I was outside going, hey, get your sea bass, 2 sea bass fillets for a tenner, with chips, or you can get 8-ounce sirloin steak, for 10 quid.
So how did you move from that into programming?
So, well, it was interesting because I had some muscle damage in my shoulder, and I went to Newcastle, or actually Gateshead to get acupuncture. It was at the Metro Centre, And whilst I was there, I met this doctor, Dr. May, who was doing the acupuncture on me, and he fixed my shoulder. Honestly, he did such a good job. Like I didn't believe. I thought I tried like getting it massaged and stuff, all kinds of stuff, but I couldn't fix it. It was like chronic pain in my shoulder. It wasn't sort of it's here, not the actual shoulder itself, but sort of like this area, sort of like upper pectoralis.
So what do you do? Acupuncture, massage?
So he did acupuncture on me, and he prescribed me some like herbal medicine. And then when one day he was like, "Oh yeah, you should you should come visit me. I'm gonna be in Durham, in a stall in Durham, the next month. So just come visit me." So I was like, "Yeah, all right." So I popped in this shop one day and I met my ex-partner. She was working there as a shop assistant.
At the time, she was not your ex-partner.
No, not my ex-partner. She was just a random shop assistant. Well, she was the translator for the doctors, and she was the receptionist.
Okay.
So I met her, and then it's weird because I dropped out of university, and I kind of realised that like I was on the life path which I didn't really choose. It's kind of just expected as a good Asian boy. You study hard, you go to university, and you find a job as a doctor or a lawyer, or an accountant, or one of these professional jobs. And I wanted to take a whole year just to sort of like think things over and like, well, what do I actually want to do with my life? And I find like whenever I ever have these periods where I want some time to just like think for myself, there's always some partner that comes along that derails all of that. So my ex-partner, I met her in a shop, and then we ended up seeing each other, and then she went back to China for a bit, and then I went to visit her in China, and we had a very volatile relationship. But when she came back, I moved to live with her in Gateshead. And I didn't have a job, well, a proper job. I just worked takeaway like once a week. So I was just living off my savings. I had like $4,000 in savings. I used it all up because I didn't want to depend on her. And then it's interesting when you're in that sort of poverty scarcity mindset, you don't even want to go shopping. Because you're like, this shop's going to set me back like 30 quid. And I'm like, 30 quid is a lot of money. And you're just like, oh, I just don't want to go shopping. I just like eat whatever's in the cupboard until like there's nothing left. Literally, I'm eating like, the last tin of canned fish. So I was working this, and I used up all my money. And then I said to my partner, I was like, I'm not gonna depend on you. So I'm just gonna go back home and find a job and make something of myself. Because my brother came visit me, and my partner was away working, and I was just at home most of the time until Wednesdays when I had to work. I worked as a delivery driver for a Chinese takeaway, and it had the benefit I get a free meal afterwards. But it paid me like £20. That was it. I was getting paid £20 a week plus tips.
That's nothing.
That's nothing, yeah. So I was just like wasting away my savings. And then so I moved back home, and then because my partner wanted me to move with her to London, and she was like, yeah, I'll just get my boss to get you a takeaway job. And that's just takeaway or a restaurant job. And I was like, nah, this is not, I'm better than this. So I said to her, I'm going to go home, make some money. And then we broke up, actually. And then I went back and I was on the dole for a bit, and then I was also working for my brother, just doing WordPress sites.
WordPress?
Yeah, just WordPress sites.
That's how you began then?
Sorry?
That's how you began?
No, actually I did, in my gap year, I built a website for my school, so I taught myself HTML.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was doing WordPress sites for my brother. And then I was on the dole as well for a bit. Then I got a job at the Open University as an assistant.
Cool.
And whilst I was in the Open University...
Is that here?
This was in Cambridge, actually. So I was driving to Cambridge every day. And it was only 3 days a week initially, then they moved it to 4 days.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Cranfield, and then I moved to Stevington.
Were you renting here at the time?
Yeah, renting.
Okay.
Yeah, and then renting in Stevington. Then after that, I applied for some internal jobs, and I got onto this training course, which is within the Open University. They were doing like some massive like IT restructuring, and they wanted to pick 6 people from around the Open University to train out to be web developers. So I got on that course, and then they trained me up, and I was working with them as a junior web developer, then as a developer, and then eventually I went contracting with Apple. That's how I started contracting.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
It's a step up.
yeah, that was a bit of a step up. So yeah, so I haven't really struggled too much. It was a struggle initially.
It sounds like it, yeah, because that's a hard labour, like hospitality jobs, like odd jobs here and there.
Yeah.
Not sure where you want to be,
Yeah.
and then that your career took off, right?
Yeah, so I have experienced poverty, and I have had some like gnarly experiences with like unscrupulous employers. Like one of my restaurant jobs, they didn't. They said they'll pay my national insurance, but they didn't. So all their restaurant staff, they were just pocketing national insurance payments they were meant to be paying to HMRC. So and then also there was like disagreements about like, because my pay was actually below minimum wage for that restaurant.
Wow.
And they said to me, you can get basically like £1 for every customer that comes in. Yeah,
Dodgy.
that's what they said. For every customer that comes in, you can get paid.
Wow.
Whereas that's what the chap said to me when I got hired. But then the owner was like, no, it should be every customer that you convinced to come in. I was like, well, you're paying me below minimum wage anyway. So if there's a day when no customer comes in, like some days it's just like Durham is absolutely dead because it's a tourist town, and some days like people are just not going to be visiting. If the students are not there, which I was working for them in the holidays, so there was not a lot of students around, and if the tourists are not there, this was like winter.
Yeah.
Tourists don't really come to Durham for winter; they come in like summer and stuff. Then there could be days where like you don't really get any customers. So some customers you do get are only the customers who have booked already beforehand. So if I can't count those ones, then I would literally be getting paid £2 an hour. You know?
It's mad.
So it's not like, it wasn't like that lucrative, shall we say.
You mind if I ask something that's maybe it's more personable to you? I'm curious how whether racism comes into that at all. You know, being Taiwan Chinese in this country, whether that plays in limiting and being difficult to get work, or so you mentioned something. I know you said you weren't affected by it. You can look for the good in things, but I imagine that would have taken its toll.
I don't really look at it like that, because unless I have like a British version of me to be a control group, I can't really say, can I? You know, it might be. I think there was initially the only thing I experienced was like, I don't use my first name. I use my middle name because my middle name's Paul, so it's easier for people to read.
Your middle name's Paul?
Well, actually it's my also known as name in my Taiwanese passport. So it's actually my first name, but there's no equivalent in the British passport, also known as. So it is actually my first name, but I just call it my middle name.
Okay.
My main name is Chi-Kwei.
Chi-Kwei?
Yeah, Chi-Kwei is my based on my Chinese name.
And does your brother call you that? Your family members?
My family members call me Chick.
Chick.
Short for Chi-Kwei.
Chi-Kwei.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's easier, isn't it?
Is that endearing, complimentary, or an insult?
I don't know. It's just family, innit?
Okay.
Doesn't really matter. It's just you have to deal with them, so it doesn't matter if it's insulting or not.
In a relationship, I'm wondering whether you'd like your partner to call you by your mother tongue name as opposed to Paul, or whether that matters.
Doesn't really matter. I answer to both. I changed my name a couple of times. Like at university, I was known as CK. So actually, some people in the dance community, they still call me. I go dancing in Milton Keynes. They still call me CK. So because I went from university to after university. Excuse me. After university, I started dancing around Milton Keynes, and because I introduced myself as CK in university, I introduced myself as CK in the dance scene. But then I started using Paul at work, so I started introducing myself as Paul as well. It's just easier.
Multi personalities.
Yeah, I'm split personality. Now, for me, I don't really care about this shit. As long as it works, you know, I don't care what you call me. Just as long as it works and you can say it. That's the main reason. I don't want people faffing around, going Chi-Kwei, and then being awkward around me, because you can see in their eyes, they're like, oh, hi, and they've forgotten your name, and they've forgotten how to pronounce it. So it's just, for me, I'm just like, let's get rid of all that awkwardness. Just call me Paul. Everyone can say Paul. You know, easy peasy.
I mean, there's that level, and then there's the actual expectations, isn't it? I mean, how people treat you in circumstances like these jobs that you had, for instance, these restaurant jobs where you're getting under minimum wage, and expectations, whether that would apply to anybody or whether that it's just something that I think they can get away with. I don't know. I mean,
Maybe, like, I know when I was working at one place, they put me in the kitchens initially as pot wash straight away, and they put all the white British people as waiters, and actually some of the white European ones as waiters, and it was always the Indian, the Chinese, like the ethnic people, they got put in the kitchens, and then when they realised that I could speak English, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you can be a waiter if you wanted to. So I think there was an element of that.
yeah.
Yeah, but I don't read into this because I think like if you're looking for it, you'll find it, and if you're just gonna get pissed off about it, it's not useful.
You have a very positive attitude to life, don't you?
It's not useful, you know. Just move on from that.
But I mean, just generally, you know, the way you can, it doesn't affect you like that. You're able to see the good.
Yeah, and also I can blend with them. Like I knew like the chefs where I worked were racist, but they were never racist to me because I just talked to them at their level. If you like, one of the class distinctions in the UK is that like, I did sociology at school, and they were saying like one of the things about the middle class is they can talk to people from the lower working class, lower class, and also people from the upper class, because the upper class people have a way of speaking, and it's very posh.
It's intimidating.
It's intimidating, whereas the working class will talk a certain way as well. So the middle class can sort of blend in with both.
Yeah.
So it makes you more versatile. And I always remember that. I was like, yeah, I think when I talk to people who are more working class, I'll change my vocal patterns a bit. You know, when I'm speaking, you know, at an interview, people in suits and stuff, I'll speak differently as well.
Yeah.
So where were we? Was it money,
Wealth and
racism,
yeah,
class,
versatility. Subjects into the mix.
Yeah, money's always been easy. Well, not easy. Sorry, I shouldn't say easy. I've always been, I think, lucky. I've sort of like fallen into the right place at the right time.
Or have you just worked for it?
I don't know, a bit of both, but I have been very lucky as well, because I applied for this job at the Open University, and then that led the way into the training for being a web developer, and then I got called by, because I was working at the Open University and I specialised in doing making accessible components, then I got contacted by the recruiter from Apple. She was looking specifically for people who understand web accessibility, because that's what I was doing for Apple. I was making their websites accessible to like people with disabilities, so making it work with screen readers.
Yeah,
So-
accessibility is important.
Yeah, so that gave me a really good understanding of like interfaces and how they should work, and like user interface design. Also, just using like semantic markup for your websites, you know.
And for those that don't know what semantic markup is, I guess it's a way of distinguishing how you would write a book, for example. You lay out it in a certain way. The headings have a hierarchy, so you can understand there's a top level, there's a sub level, and so on and so on. And that's easier for not only coding, for other developers to understand what the context is, but it's good for accessibility for people that are disabled, that are visually difficult, they're visual impairments. So when they're reading for a screen reader, they have a
They can basically the screen. They can grab all the headings.
Yes.
And then they can get a quick overview of what the page is.
Absolutely.
Navigate to what's relevant to them.
Yeah. Things that people aren't aware, especially the computer science guys that say we're colouring in us.
Yeah.
We don't program.
Yeah. We're like, yeah, but we're very good at colouring, so fuck
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. I got the best blues and the best yellows.
Yeah.
Yellow.
I got the proper shade of blue there, mate. That's like sky blue.
Indeed. And Leonardo da Vinci was probably one of the best artists of a generation, and he was a scientist, wasn't he?
Yeah. Right, now let's should we move on to the next,
The big subject.
relationships.
The big R.
This is something I always have trouble with. My relationships are, as you know, Steve, very dramatic. a lot of ups and downs. So what's your experiences with relationships?
Yeah, I'm probably not a good example. I'm not good at relationships generally, and I mean intimate relationships. You know, because we have a relationship, don't we? You and I. This is a relationship. It's a friendship.
Yeah.
But it's still a relationship. Anything outside of intimacy, and there isn't to say that there isn't some intimacy, some connection on the deeper level, but obviously, you know, a partner, for example, a female partner or male partner or whatever it is the person wants. I'm not good at that. My history of relationships don't tell a good story. I've had a couple of 4-year relationships, so it's not terrible. It's just I've never been settled with any one person. I think I've never been 100% committed. I think fundamentally it comes down to that, because I haven't completely accepted the people that I've been with in the past. There's always been something that hasn't quite been enough for me. So I guess I seek ways of compensating for that in life in other ways, but obviously not good enough to the point where I'm still in those relationships. I'm not end up arguing with them, or something's not right, and just conflict, friction, too much friction. And maybe it's a testament of my past years of being in a traumatic childhood where I'm not used to having a supportive mother, I'm not used to having a supportive father, I'm not used to a supportive environment that's loving and nourishing. And I'm used to that tension and friction that it doesn't faze me when it comes to arguments about things or getting things done. What phases me is laziness. I don't like laziness in myself or in others, and I think I end up arguing with the person I'm with just because things. I feel like there's no organic flow. It's like they're stuck, they're fixed, they're not going to change. I mean, you can't change a person, but it doesn't mean you can't change with them. You move with them. You know, there's something that matters to me, and I want, and it's something about them. I want them to be healthier, for example, or whatever. I mean, I can't force them to go on a special diet, and it isn't about weight loss. It's just about being healthy. But it's the mindset. It's the living every day. You know, if I'm the people I've been with in the past, the kind of girl that I'm attracted to tends to be someone who's a bigger girl. I tend to be attracted to a heavier set woman. Always have. I don't know. Maybe it's opposites attract, and unfortunately, with that comes a comfortable kind of attitude to life. You know, living life comfortably. I don't quite gel with that because I don't want to be comfortable. I want to be pushed, but I don't want to be so pushed. You know, there's enough. I just need enough friction.
Yeah, because what if the partner you're with is more driven than you? Would that cause conflict? Because then she's like maybe like more domineering. Perhaps if she's more drunk, she's like, Steve, come on, let's get the fuck out of here. Why are you taking so long?
Yeah,
you know.
I don't know. I mean, it depends, doesn't it? Because I was in a relationship that's similar like that, but it wasn't.
She wasn't lazy, no.
No, she wasn't pushing me. She was dominant, but it's very argumentative, and I always just felt like everything was an argument, and it's challenging. And maybe it was just us. We just rubbed each other up the wrong way. But it comes to a point where I the worst of me come out. So maybe that isn't the right person for me. So I've been with two types of women. One's dominant, one is submissive, and unfortunately, neither work. So I don't know where.
Which one did you have the most chemistry with?
Different in different ways, I guess. Different. I mean, my son's mum, we were together for. Well, I met her when I was about 30-something, 34, 35 or something. At that period in my life, I suffered from chronic fatigue. I just come from living in Australia for a year, and I was vegan at the time. I was trying to deal with my IBS issues, and that actually made it worse, as it made my fatigue worse. And I met her, and she was supportive, and I think initially there was a massive chemistry between us, and it was just comfortable. It was just sustainable, and I didn't realise how good that was. But I caused friction with her. It wasn't really her. She was kind of very much like an elephant, like consistent, going with life, and I was this kind of badger that's wanted to get things done or whatever.
Badger.
I was the conflicting one, and unfortunately to this day, we had a child. We had a son, and unfortunately now at the moment it's a side subject, so we're not talking at the moment. But We broke up, and it took time. We kind of, I think, over the years, appreciated each other again. We kind of got close. We didn't get intimate, but it was just close again. But yeah, recently it's just been side subject. I won't talk about that right now, but at the time, yeah, we were close, but we had ups and downs, and it comes to the point where you're just breaking point. And when we had our son, it was hard because it was sleepless nights, and I think that put challenges on both of us. It was about him; it wasn't about us or being together. And we both had different views on raising a child, so that put challenges in the way, and we ended up breaking up. Then I met this girl, which is the opposite, dominant. So
Yeah, that's actually interesting what you said. Because I was speaking to my friend yesterday. She said she talked to her priest, and her priest was telling her.
Her priest.
Yeah, her priest was telling her that when you're in a relationship and you have children, you still need to focus on each other, because your children will grow up and they will leave, and then you just got the relationship you two have to left. So
empty shell.
Yeah, so if you don't take care of your partner, then it's not a good thing. It's not a good situation. And also, and a lot of times, I think when you do have a child, the focus is very much on the child, especially for the mother, because the mother's the primary caregiver, so she would invest a lot of her time in the child. But if that means the relationship with her partner's neglected, I mean, my mum, she had 5 kids, and she told me that, I think your dad felt a bit ignored a lot of the times, because I was always dealing with the kids and stuff. I didn't really have much time for him. So I think it can be quite tough on like dads and relationships,
The things we take for granted, anything that's new that comes into our life affects everything. And a child is a massive change. Like moving house, changing job. They're the things, the big stresses in life. But a child it's a massive shift. I think you need to be definitely in the same wavelength and values before committing to that. And at the time, I guess for most parents, we're all naive. We don't know what it's like to be a parent, and it's all a learning journey. And we find out along the way, whether we've got whether we cut the mustard or not. I think in terms of moral kind of values, we're on the same path, but it's just a day to day, how we handle it. We've lived different lives, we have different experiences, so we have different ways of dealing with things. So in a relationship, it comes the same.
Yeah. Also, that's the thing. Also, like I think I have a sort of fear of living with a partner, because I don't want the spiciness to die. I want it to remain sort of passionate and stuff. Like the honeymoon phase. I want that to last. Whereas I feel like when you move in with a partner, you just become part of the furniture a lot of the times. You kind of become too meshed with each other. You know each other too intimately that the familiarity, it just creates boredom. You just know. You fall into sort of your patterns, and you get into these ruts, which are really difficult to get out of. So that's sort of my main fear of like living with a partner, and I think that's one of the challenges of relationships, isn't it? It's like, how do you keep the desire alive in the long term? Can desire be maintained in the long term? Because it's like, well, it's always like the next shiny toy, isn't there, around the corner?
Yeah,
which is enticing.
That's exactly. I was going to ask, does it matter? But you just brought it up there. Exactly, the next shiny toy. It matters because of the next shiny toy that could disrupt and derail everything. Because if you're comfortable, and someone comes into your life, and it doesn't just apply to men, it applies to women too.
Yeah.
Offering
an adventure.
You can get caught up in that adventure, have an affair, even if it's an emotional affair, and that might be acceptable if you're not breaking rules within the sense of what the relationship is okay with, each person's okay with. You could have a close friendship with a female, your partner is either okay with it or not okay with it, and that established where there's friction, and likewise vice versa. If your partner, for example, I don't know, let's say they go and play bridge or they do some other thing that's neglectful. It's a child, they're looking after the child in such a way to the point where there isn't enough feeding of the relationship. These things take over our lives, so you do need to maintain that desire, don't you, in a relationship? You need to maintain the desire, because if there isn't enough of it, there's the outside desire which pulls you away from it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But then I think sometimes the desire is not healthy as well, because sometimes it comes from unhealthy basis, like like the make-up sex. Couples, they're quite fiery and they argue and then they have make-up sex afterwards, and it's so all hot because like you have the push and pull of like, oh, they split up and there's this intense like emotion from splitting up, and then you have the reconciliation and then there's an intense like emotion from the reconciliation. So that kind of sort of like push and pull dynamics can become quite toxic as well. So
that's if necessarily get your desire.
Because, like for me, like that desire, I was reading about this. Actually, I was talking to my friend, Mike. Mike is a Frenchman, and I was talking to him about this philosopher. He's called Bernard Henri Levy, and he's married to a model. She's like a really I think she's a model actress, and he was saying that like it was like probably like 15 years when I read this article, but I think he was saying because they're French, they use the informal, and they have formal and informal versions of the word. So his wife would use the informal version of you, so she'll say vous. And he said, I think subconsciously she's using that to create a subtle sort of like boundary, distance. And he's saying, because if you don't have that boundary and distance, there's no barrier to cross. And when there's no barrier to cross, there's no transgression. And when there's no transgression, there's no desire. So it's quite interesting, because he's saying that like, yeah, in some ways that like, actually the very act of getting close to someone and removing those boundaries actually reduces the sort of like the tension, the desire.
So you think tension comes from
not having something? So this is why his wife was like creating this sort of like subtle sort of distance between them by using the informal word. I guess it's hard for us to conceptualize that, because in English we don't have that distinction. But for them, even though they're married, she's creating that sort of like subtle boundary for him to cross.
Yeah, but there could be an equivalent in terms of how you address someone. But I understand what you mean.
Yeah. So that's just purely for using communication style. And the problem is when you're sort of like so enmeshed with someone, living with them, and all your life is intertwined together, you know everything about them, it's quite hard to have that desire, Like, can you want what you already have? You can't really, can you? You can't.
Depends. There's familiarity in the routines we take for granted.
Unless you always like have this distance maintained, like this husband and wife, they create this dynamic between them. But then at the same time, if you have that you have that dynamic between the two of you, where you have that sort of like constant desire, that means you can't have that deep sort of emotional closeness that comes from like a partnership with someone, right? You can't say like, you cannot like create this sort of like deep emotional bond if there's this sort of subtle like almost like anxiety that the person is not available to you, like that you're always constantly pursuing them.
Doesn't it depend on how you like to experience the desire? Because everybody has their own craving, and if there's tension, that tension might be right for you, might be just the amount of right, and the person you're with, it might not be, might be just too much for them. And if it's over enough of a period of time, that can, push people apart. When it's not quite the same. I mean, no one's entirely perfectly suited to each other. There's always going to be some tension. But I just wonder if, like, I'm thinking of my ex-partner, for example, who's very easygoing. There isn't much tension with her at all.
Yeah.
Other than our different opinions on childcare, but it isn't from a sexual point of view, from a wanting, from a desire point of view. We both have different drives, and some people have that. They just harmonise with each other. Maybe they're the same. But I'm like you. I like a bit of friction. I like a bit of tension. But with that means maybe if I'm with someone who's like me and who also likes a bit of tension, maybe we're not best suited for the traditional relationship where we live together 5 times, 7 times a week and are in each other's pockets. Maybe you can have that tension if you maintain that distance and it's intermittent until maybe with time you can get closer and closer, but it might take many years. But a traditional relationship, I don't know if that works.
I always find that the people I have the best relationships with, in terms of intimate relationships, I don't have the greatest chemistry with. And the people I have the greatest chemistry with, I don't have a very good intimate relationship with. As in like a sort of like emotional understanding, connection. We don't have like a synergistic relationship where we can work together at goals and achieve them. But so it's almost like a short term, like emotional. No, this long term sort of like partnership where like you can build a life together.
Yeah.
And that takes certain qualities. And then there's like the chemistry that you get in the short term, in the moment, like the fuck me now emotion. That I don't find that in the same package. I don't tend to find that in the same package. I've yet to like be in a relationship where I have both, where I have like, this girl, I feel like we can be together for the long term and actually build something together. And I'm always like constantly want to jump her. It's like two different energies. There's like the wifey material and like, the girls who's kind of like a bit more, a little bit more naughty.
I'm going to throw another spanner in the works here.
Okay.
Because this is a lot of it's mental, and it sounds like mental games, like mind games. It isn't necessarily. It's just how we all how we work with each other socially. But the other spanner in the works is the core biology, testosterone, estrogen, the pheromones. Whether you were drinking alcohol the night before, for example, whether you're dosing up on loads of protein, whatever is the potent aphrodisiac in your life. Like, it might sound odd, like if I drink milk, for instance, it's kind of an aphrodisiac for me. Strange.
Milk?
Yeah.
For me, it's coffee. Coffee makes me proper randy.
Yeah. And that's, so coffee would do that because it's a vasodilation, so in the whole body, it's opening up. Your blood circulation is better, so therefore it's going to make you more stimulant. Milk does it for me, I think probably because of the protein. It's just a quick absorption of protein. I don't know why. I guess like whey protein, similar sort of thing. I digress, but the thing is, sexual drives don't even have to relate to the person. It's internal. It's you, and how you live your life. Now, if you're with someone who's comfortable, think about how this works. Someone who's kind of easygoing, laid back. What kind of diet, what kind of food, what kind of lifestyle does that entail? It's not going to be stimulants. It's not going to be things that are going to go, wow, excited, and it's going to be calm. And those sorts of things aren't aphrodisiacs.
No.
Fattening up, for instance, getting fat and obese and comfortable isn't an aphrodisiac. It's the opposite. It's just almost like, do you want to sleep? That'd be my sleeping partner, not my sex partner.
Yeah. And also there's relationship psychologist Esther Perel. She says that actually sometimes we protest that day what we fantasize by night. So what we protest about in the day could be the thing we fantasize at night. Because it's got that sort of like same sort of eroticism of the forbidden.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like this. Have you heard of the Madonna whore complex in some men, where they'll actually they'll see. Actually, I learned about this when I was out dancing one night. I got this chatting to this woman, and she was saying that like her husband, she was in this long relationship with this man, and he never really wanted to have sex with her or do anything exciting in bed, because he was brought up in a really religious environment, and he didn't want to. He thought that was wrong. You can't do that kind of thing to your wife. But and some men have this sort of distinction where there's like there's the Madonna, so you have to treat her like a lady and stuff.
Put them on a pedestal.
Yeah. But then there's like women who you can just do the naughty stuff with. So they can't sort of reconcile that within their own minds. So a lot of these men, they'll like act out by visiting like peep shows and all these kind of things, because they can't experience that in the context of their own marriage, own relationship. It's interesting.
Finding the balance in a relationship. What's right for you? What's right?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Also, what's good in a long-term partnership? Because I think even like if you love each other, it's not really enough. It's like what makes a good long-term partnership is you have the same values and you have the same vision, and you have the same lifestyle as well. Because if you have a lifestyle where like your partner's always staying in and you're always going out, and also like you value, being at home reading, and your partner values going out and meeting friends and stuff, then it's very, very difficult to build a shared life together.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, I always keep talking to you about Helen Fisher. She's an anthropologist.
Yeah, I've read her stuff.
What is it?
Why him, why her?
It's explorers, isn't it? Not adventurers. Explorers, builders,
Directors, negotiators.
So how it works is like if you think in terms of values, explorers, they value like adventure,
Mm-hmm.
and so and in terms of like the brain system, they're addicted to the dopamine,
Mm-hmm.
the excitement. So they very much want to explore, travel, do different crazy kind of shit. And so they would be a better match with each other. Whereas builders are the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're better off finding different other builders. And I think I don't know if this is his book, but I read somewhere that for them, like the brain chemical is like serotonin, and like oxytocin, sort of like the bonding
Calm.
chemical. Yeah, more calm, more settled. And then you have directors. Was it? Directors and negotiators,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very much better with the opposite.
Yeah.
So you can't have two directors together because they'll argue. They'll just bash heads.
Yeah.
It's like two people trying to lead,
Mm-hmm.
and then two negotiators. They just won't make a decision
Yeah.
because they're just like, oh yeah, whatever you do is fine. Whatever you do is fine, and then there's no like leadership. So what would you say you're more of, Steve? Are you more of a...
I've done that test. Like I've done the questionnaire and I've answered for myself. It'd be interesting if someone else did the test on my behalf. Because I was saying about this earlier on, it'd be good. I think that's a good measurement, really. Get a few different people in the life to do the psychology test on your behalf. But yeah, I think I score high on the negotiator. That's my highest, and then it's the director, and then it's the explorer. Well, actually, the director and explorer are kind of equal, but they're fairly high. And even the way I'm talking, it probably sounds like I'm more director than I am negotiator. It's the director's kind of testosterone associated, and negotiator's more estrogen associated. But still abstract ideas. But in terms of when I compare myself to other people, I am dominant. I'm confident. I don't. What's the word? I don't seek the power. I don't want to be in the position of power. I don't like to be influential. And I think part of that comes into negotiator. I like to dream and create and go with the flow. I don't often organise events, for example. I don't often lead. In my job, I tend to work more solo. I can work with others, fine, but I tend to work more solo. So I'm not really a director in that sense. I'm confident, and that's my outward exterior. But I'm not really that extrovert. I spend a lot of time at home. So maybe the negotiator is right. And I feel good about myself when I am more in that negotiator mindset than a director. But I have this kind of polar contrast within my character. I can be both. I can be one or the other. Maybe not at the same time.
Yeah, and you're different around different people, aren't you? Like, probably there's always an exchange of roles happening when you're with different people. Like, I know with my older brother Sam, I would probably defer more to him. So in that situation, probably he'll be more of a director, and I'll be more of a negotiator. But with my younger siblings, I'll probably be more of a director. So
Yeah.
because you sort of take on that leadership mantle, and with younger siblings, you tend to ping off the older sibling for like direction,
Yeah.
because they've gone before you. And it's different in different roles as well, different people. Like in certain relationships, like with my first relationship, I was very much initially. I think she was more of a director because I was so much younger than her. She was 9 years old. Well, she is 9 years older than me. So she was more financially stable as well. She had a steady job. She navigated more of the world than me, so she could navigate it better than me. So I remember I went to visit her in China and stuff, and I was just following her around, and she was just like taking me to this place, that place. But then she started getting stressed because I think actually naturally, although she was directing me because I'm less experienced than her, she would prefer to be in a role where she was more of a negotiator. So she was getting stressed because she was always leading me and getting stressed that like, oh, I've got to work out where we're going and everything. Also, I couldn't read Chinese. I can't read Chinese, so when I was in China, I couldn't read anything. She had to very much direct things. And then I remember there was one day I was like, oh, she's getting stressed and I don't really know what's happening. And then I was like, oh, I think it's because she's doing all the leading and having to plan everything. So there was just one day where I like flipped the roles, and I remember I just outlined exactly what we were doing that day, and just said, okay, we got up and I was like, okay, let's eat, let's do this. Just very much set the schedule for the day. And then I remember we got onto the underground. It was in Beijing. We got onto the underground, and after me leading for about like, half the day, she said, oh, we love each other again. That's what she said. Because when she was in that sort of like mindset of she has to direct and like she has to like manage and like plan everything, she was stressed out. She didn't really have time to focus on like, our relationship. And then when I took on that mantle, then she could relax. She could sort of relax. I was directing, so she didn't need to take on that role anymore.
She could be more loving.
Yeah, she can be more loving. She can be more sort of like traditionally more feminine, in that role, and just relax and just go with the flow.
Maybe that's what I want. Maybe that's what I want in a relationship, where I can embrace that love in myself, and I feel good about myself being that person more than a director.
So that you're alright being a negotiator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Possibly.
just about trusting and having faith, I think, in the person that's leading.
That's the problem, really. I think this is the problem which a lot of women have these days, because actually with the women's rights movement, they are better directors than most men. Women, I think, are really like starting to get ahead of the curve nowadays, where they're like, more women are going to university, they're getting better jobs, they're like starting to reach a greater parity with men in terms of finances and stuff. They make good decisions, they make good leaders, and it's just like, well, where's a man that could sort of match them? And if they are naturally a negotiator, someone who can take on that role and they can trust to lead them better than they can lead. That's the issue, isn't it?
I think women have always been able to do that, and different women in different situations. It's just about the rights and the cultures and the expectations.
Yeah.
The not being able to vote and not being paid as much as men. This kind of crazy patriarchy that we've lived in for so many generations. And in different countries, they're even more strict than in European countries and the developed world, should I say? But they've always been like that. Women have been strong directors in all of history. His story. Why don't we call it their story rather than his? Because it's all dominant about men, but it doesn't mean that women haven't been expressive. We don't know. We haven't been around 200,000 years ago, whatever it is, how long humans have existed. But it wouldn't surprise me if women have always been like that.
Yeah, probably. And it's only when I think it's not good or bad. I think if you want to be a housewife, you can be a housewife. If you want to be a house husband, you can be a house husband.
It's harder to be what isn't the culture, though, isn't it?
It's harder, yeah. But I think if you're living true to yourself, like you're saying, perhaps you are more of a negotiator, and negotiators traditionally be more of a feminine quality.
Well, say I am more of. It's what I want to be, because it's not like I am. I could be anything. I could be like water. I can be like that one day, and it depends on who I'm with and who I'm around. But I am not. I'm not that person. It's what I am now. Right now, I'm probably a director. I'm a director of my own life, and I don't have many people. I don't have any intimate relationship. I'm single at the moment, and that could change with a new relationship, and the relationship that I have, say with my son or with you, or the friendships that I have in different situations. I am not this person. I am not a director necessarily. Some days I'm an explorer. What am I most? If I look retrospectively back, yeah, maybe those things. But like the way I'm expressing myself now, my hands are open, they're out like this. I could be like this. This is a very director thing to do. The thumbs, the willpower. When you were talking a moment ago, my hands were down here. I was receiving. I didn't want to be director. I wanted to slow down because this was something I really wanted to pay attention to and embrace in myself. These are the sort of things, our body language, things protect the content. But I don't want to be. I certainly don't want to be labelled. It moves. No one wants to be labelled, but
yeah, these things shift as well, don't they, moment by moment.
Yeah.
So,
but then I don't want to give complete control either, because I've been in a situation in my childhood where my thing's gone off.
Yeah, go on.
Where my dad was overwhelmed with the stress of his wife suffering, my mum, suffering from MS. And his way of dealing with it was anger. And my mum's way of dealing with it was anger too, I suppose. Just expressing. She screamed. I remember there's times she screamed at night. It wasn't because my dad was abusing or anything. She was just screaming for attention. They're both tortured because of the suffering of their health. Like I don't want to be in a position where I'm completely dependent on someone. Let them lead to the point where I give up everything. I don't think anybody should really. Someone can lead, but define what that is. Every relationship is unique. Everything's evolving, organic. It grows, isn't it? But I don't know. I think I want something in between.
So more sort of balanced, where it's like more of a
to and fro.
You lead one day, I lead the other day.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
So if there's love there, it can be nourished. Then we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. There's an interesting author. His name's David Dada, and he talks about a thing called polarity. And he talks very much about masculine versus feminine polarity. And these are not gender specific, by the way. So he says like you have both in you, masculine and feminine polarities, and they can shift through your lifetime as well. So it's not like they're necessarily fixed, because like some men, they're very like masculine when they're younger, testosterone's flowing, they're just like very directed. But then as they get older, testosterone drops, they get more into their feminine, they like flow a bit more, they're not so intense, And he said one of the things interesting, he said like, before we had these set gender roles where men were men, women were women. You have to be masculine, you have to be feminine. But then with the change in society, women's rights movement, now we've gone sort of in a direction where like we're more embracing wholeness, where like, you can be more masculine if you want, you can be more feminine. And you move to more relationships which are more like balanced, where you have like, a woman can lead and drive the car. It doesn't have to be that it's always the man's job. Man can cook and stay at home and take care of kids. Doesn't mean that he's less of a man. It's just whatever the couple decide between them. But then one of the things he said was interesting was like, he said there is still a next step to take, where it's like we move even beyond that to say like, what is it that you most want to do in life? What is it that you feel like is your purpose? It could be that you want to stay at home and be a house husband. It could be that you want to be, you want to go out and make the money and stuff. What is it specifically for you? And then find someone that complements you, rather than be like have this sort of doctrine put on you, which is prescribed by somebody else.
Or because the doctrine you put on yourself by doing exactly that, by saying this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be. You become that thing. 2 weeks in, a month in, a year later, you're like, I've played with this. it's not what I want now. I want this other thing.
But then a lot of things we have, it could be that you are just more changeable. This is one of the things they say about artists versus builders. Builders have a more fixed identity, whereas an artist's personality is more changeable. Whereas perhaps more you have like more of an artistic disposition.
I know I do.
So you are more changeable. You are more sort of mutable in how you are. But for other people who are more fixed, I think sometimes if they live they have a relationship where they are more sort of it's almost like a suppression, isn't it? Because you're saying like, oh, I know I'm meant to be PC and stuff and everything's meant to be 50-50 and I'm actually a director, but I have to suppress some of that in order to fit in and just be director half the time and negotiator. That's not being true to yourself, is it?
Yeah, but there's negotiation in every relationship.
That's true, yeah. But we're talking about like sort of like abstract concepts in order to illustrate a point. As in like, imagine a
long term, you mean? The long term repression that someone might go for suppression by doing that for so long and realising, no, they want to go out and firefight or they want to be but on the front lines of the war, they'll be a soldier.
Yeah, exactly.
Those sorts of things.
Yeah. So if imagine if we have like a pure director. I'm sure these ones don't exist. There's no like
they
pure... Not someone who's like completely just doesn't negotiate ever, right?
Well, there are, relative. Think of people like that are in high CEO positions, for example, or they've taken that leap.
Okay.
Either they've taken that leap, they become that, or they're always ingrained that was their character. But there are, I wouldn't say there's no. Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe there's no pure type, but there's so much that side that you wouldn't know the difference, because for us mortals, mere mortals, we're not your average Elon Musk or.
Elon Musk I can see probably like that.
Yeah.
He's probably like a pure director.
He's brave.
Does whatever he wants really.
He's very brave, and then that comes with that brave, but also with power, because that comes with that bravery. As they say in that TV series, the Spider-Man thing, with power comes responsibility, because you can affect so many things with that power.
Yeah. And also power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's where the danger lies as well, because you have an effect in so much of life. You could very much abuse that if you wanted to.
It's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because if you feel guilt and shame for anything that you might have done that might have tarnished or hurt others or the world at large, then that's going to dilute everything, your whole power, your sense of purpose. And I've had that with me. Humility has just overwhelmed me, because I realise that I've caused more harm in having this sometimes. But then I don't continue being that director, I don't continue with that power. So it's a hard thing to hold on to.
Also, like, what would our natural personalities be like if we didn't have all these traumas and stuff put on us? All these like things. Like if we lived, say, a completely healthy, nourishing childhood, and our gifts were who we were was encouraged rather than diminished, would we be how we are now? I doubt very much that we would be. I feel like maybe we'll be like a purer expression of ourselves without all these like fears holding us back.
But then define what a nourishing, loving childhood is.
I'll say like where your parents like emotionally healthy. There was no like sort of like constant arguments and bickering and.
Is that what healthy is?
I'd say so, yeah. I'll say if you had. No, I wouldn't say like there's no conflict, because there's always conflicts in human relationship, is there? But I'd say that the conflicts are resolved without, degenerating into like screaming matches and stuff at each other.
It's about balance, isn't it? And the balance according to the organic situation. Like, I like to think of the gym as a good analogy. You go to the gym, right? Now think of the gym in terms of an argument between two people, your mum and dad. The gym is like that. It's an exercise. You've got to exercise it. Because if you don't exercise it, there's no muscle that builds up. And if there's no muscle that builds up, traumas come in all shapes and sizes. It isn't in the family circuit, it's the world at large. It's going out to earn money, to have food on the table, to be in a shelter, to have a warm environment. That is work. It's very cool. And if you don't have that argument, yeah, maybe they might seem healthy initially.
You might not have any teeth to you to...
And you grow to be this
softy.
And maybe that works in some ways, how people relate to you, and they love you more because you're less conflicting, but you're still dependent on them. You're reaching them socially. You don't have that muscle to be the director, for example. There's pros and cons, like the masculine feminine come into it again. You need to have some power to live. Living requires exercise, requires arguments, requires going to the gym.
Personal power.
And what is healthy, what is balanced, is dependent, I guess, on the situation. What would be healthy? What would be healthier? Not necessarily what would be healthy. What you had in your childhood may not have seemed healthy, but it was. It was healthy. It could have been healthier, maybe. But you...
Yeah, I mean, we're still standing, right? We're still relatively functional.
Yeah.
Adults.
And it's relative, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
You're not a criminal. You
True.
haven't chopped off someone's head.
True.
You haven't gone to the lowest depravity.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Also, the thing is, like, you could be like in a really loving household and stuff, still be traumatized. Like you can never know really, because trauma is not what happened to you. Trauma is what happens inside you when that thing happened to you. Right, so two people can go through the same experiences, and one will be traumatized and one wouldn't. It's like how it happens is it's the emotional processing of that event.
So it's not what happens to you; it's what happens inside you.
Yeah,
that's what you said, right?
Yeah,
it's very true. Yeah, I agree.
So I love my sound bites. I think that was Gabriel Mate. I should quote the people who.
And what happens inside you can be massively affected by your lifestyle and how you set yourself up for that. And if it's so comfortable,
then yeah. So if you makes
you vulnerable to it.
If you just like wrap your kids in cotton wool, it might make them less resilient, because then they're not exposed to, like, the onslaughts of the cruel onslaughts of the world. So they may not have that capacity to metabolize these experiences.
Metabolize, yeah.
So
it's true.
So it's so hard to like to determine. I know what you mean. It's so hard to determine what is healthy, right? Because maybe, like, I see my daughter and stuff. She's like had 9 years of her parents arguing with each other, But at the same time, she's very resilient. She's a very resilient girl, and she's very dominant as well as a person, as a personality, even towards me and stuff. She has no qualms about just like punching me in the face if I annoy her. She's like
okay. Well, that's
a little mini.
So it's somewhat slightly unhealthy. Physical violence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm her dad, so she doesn't do that with like people at school or anything.
Yeah, but I mean, even that.
Yeah, but she's like, if I really annoy her and stuff, she kicked me once in the face. I was like, whoa. I was like, you can't do that, Louisa. But yeah, and I would say, like, she has that sort of emotional resilience because she's had that sort of experience being around, like, her parents are always like constantly not in which is like, I mean, me and my ex, we just don't really get on, so we've had like lots of arguments and stuff. But I wouldn't say she was like emotionally not well adjusted. She has friends at school. She gets on with her friends. She can make friends. She can bond socially with different people and stuff. But I would say she's quite a strong personality, my daughter. So it's hard to know whether that's like nature or nurture. Maybe she was naturally just a dominant personality anyway, or maybe her experiences have made her that. It's hard to know, isn't it?
And the experiences can affect her hormones too over time.
That's true. They say that girls who grow up in families where their dad wasn't present tend to have slightly more masculine faces, like more angular faces.
Compensate.
Yeah, so the effects of, like, I think more testosterone in the body. Because testosterone, what does it create? It creates armoring. It creates, like, it makes you bigger, stronger.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, all these things are abstract, really, because when you think about what is the human body, it is a composition of microorganisms feeding on top of our skin, inside of our gut. We've got electrical signals, obviously, between our brain and the rest of the body, but And people will say that the mind is the brain, but it isn't. The mind is the whole body and the external all at the same time. You know, we're all connected to it, and all of it's working in synchronicity. But it is still an abstract idea, like the word love. We are driven by these microorganisms. So all of these things that move us, they evolve with us over the years. You know, our diet changes or whatever affects us. This is they call it second mind. The gut is the second mind or something like that. But it's not. It's all integral. It's all part of the same thing. I remember seeing some really interesting videos about this guru online. This Indian guru who makes these really profound, simplistic statements. You know, he's so just it pulls you in. He's got this Indian guy with a big white beard.
This is called a Sandguru or something.
Something like that. Yeah. And he had this conversation with this kind of scientific philosopher or something like that. It's an interesting conversation. I don't remember the name's Guy, but sorry, the guy's name. The name's Guy. But there's a subject. He says, "You are not the body, and or the mind." That's what he said. Yeah, you are not the body or the mind. And then the guy, the scientific philosopher, replies with, "No, I am the body and the mind." Yeah, we are. This is. Who are you?
But then, if your mind changes and your body changes, so if like you know in a year's time, everything that was you is replaced by other material, which you've consumed.
Yeah.
So then, can you still say you're your body?
You can say it. And I would say it would be true for the second that you said it, and then the second later, you're not. You know, it changes, right?
So you see, from one perspective it's true, from another perspective it's not true.
Okay.
So like well, they both say it's true in some ways. He says you're not your body, you're not your mind.
Yeah, it's a contextual, but the thing is, right, we could come into the question of what is truth, right? Truth is what people believe it to be.
As in, give an example.
Right, so there's, in terms of philosophy, because this is where it comes from, right? There is the true nature of science tests, for example. You know, we can prove that this is a table, it has certain properties. You know, I mentioned this earlier on, but there's objective truth. That is what we consider as scientifically proven to meet standards that we all agree with. We all agree that, you know, this is a microphone. Right? That's truth. Okay, but it's more than that. It's not just a piece of steel. You know, that is made up of all these things. Sorry. Objective truth is universal acceptance of. That's what we all agree on.
But there's points in time where people agreed that the Earth was flat. So
that was true at the time.
Okay.
There's objective truth.
So was that objective truth? Yeah.
Yes.
That was
if that's what everyone believed.
That's what everyone believed. Okay.
Yeah. Subjective truth is what we internally believe. Like, well, I might believe something, you might believe something different based on my personal experience. And there's another one, but I don't believe. You know, if you were gonna, we can argue what truth is, but I think truth is what people believe at the time. You know, it can change. So this is the truth now. This is the truth now. This is the truth now. And we go back, that 3 seconds ago when I said this is the truth now isn't the truth anymore.
Yeah, because you don't step into the same river twice. Water's changed.
Yeah.
So
I like that phrase where they say, the king is dead. Long live the king.
Yeah.
And for ages I could never quite understand that. Well, where's the full stop? The king is dead, full stop. Right, new story. Right, the new king. But they don't. They should just carry it on. It's just one line. The king is dead. Long live the king. It's like there's no.
For me, truth is different depending on the frame you put around it. Something. You know. So. From one perspective,
yeah.
it's like what you were saying with that Sandguru. He said the Indian mystic guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Sandguru, but he says you're not your mind, you're not your body. That's true on some level, but it's also true that you are your body and you are your mind, right? Like basically, that's a debate about how do you define where's the seat of identity, right? That is what the debate is essentially. Because the scientists, you are saying you are the body and you're the mind, because that's the things we can measure. We can see that you have a physical body and you have a mind that can like interpret and analyze and debate.
Yeah.
So the scientist is saying that's true. The Indian mystic is probably talking from like a mystical perspective, and he's saying like, well, no, that's the spirit within you which animates the body and the mind, and that is the real you. You are the observer behind the body and the mind. That's probably where he's coming from.
Yeah, from an abstract point of view, it makes sense.
Yeah, and also like say like was it Descartes? He says
Descartes.
Descartes. Is it Descartes?
I think
I can't pronounce it. Descartes. He says was it I think therefore I am.
Yeah, it's a statement in itself which is self-encompassing. I think, like the statement itself, I think therefore I am. It isn't finished. It's alive. I think therefore I am alive. Almost. You don't even have to put that in any context. In it, the line itself is self-representative of what it is. That's why it can remain true in all scenarios.
Think therefore I am, but then isn't that equating the thinking with being?
No, it's the ability to think. You can't be alive. You can't think if you're not alive.
But then when you're saying I think therefore I am, so you're saying I'm using thinking as the basis for determining that I am being. Right.
Just say I am walking, therefore I am. I am writing this sentence, therefore I am. I am alive, therefore I am.
Okay. Yeah.
Just so happen to use the word thinking.
But it could have been anything.
I suppose it could be. Therefore, it's just words.
But then the consciousness that says I am is not the consciousness that thinks, because you can observe your mind working, right? We're getting like proper metaphysical here.
Just say I.
Yeah.
Or could just say am. It's just a word.
Yeah.
It means nothing in context of anything else.
In the Bible, there's a phrase. It says, "I am that I am."
I am that I am. Yeah, that would make sense.
So I guess that's saying that I am that ultimate being.
Yeah.
I am that I am.
You're a web programmer. I'm a web programmer. Right. We can see how it works. But someone else might be watching this and listening to this.
Yeah, they're listening.
What the hell?
They're going deep. They're going crazy.
What the hell? Yes.
We're disclaimer. We're not on mushrooms, by the way. Just impossible.
Oh, that's a good point.
Take some.
Yeah.
You can get all philosophical.
The
as well.
ingredients are
nootropics, they call
the
it.
ingredients are Paul and Steve.
Paul and Steve go on a bender.
L-theanine, which would be calming, and I have felt proper kind of calmed. Graphonia seed, which is the ingredient for 5-HTP, which is sedative, and vitamin B1, which is actually stimulant energy. But I don't know how much of it is in there. But it did say it's got a massive dose, 375 milligrams. That's a high dose. So I'm curious, how much 5-HTP is in this. I'll be getting sleep tonight, that's for sure.
Steve, I've had 4.
We have slowed down though.
Yeah, but then we've been running as well.
But I mean, in the conversation, we've been on this, nearly 4 hours now? Is it 4? 400... No, sorry. 40 seconds. 40 bars or something like that. What's the time? Well, it's nearly 2, so what time is that? A couple of hours maybe.
Wow, long conversation. We should probably wrap this up. Before we do, any quotes you like?
Many that you've said, and I can't think of them now.
What's what I said to you before on the walk?
Trajectory of pain and fear or something like that?
I said, we live a life... I can't even remember. My own words.
There's something along the lines of a trajectory of pain and fear or something like that. That's one of them. And when you said before to me about...
We live a life where the trajectory is bent by fear.
Yeah, something like that.
And then there's another one where it said, why are you reanimating the trauma of the past with the energy of the present?
Yes.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Why do you want to reanimate the trauma of the past with the energy of the present? So that's an idea that like there's a place for therapy. There definitely is a place for therapy. But therapy is dealing with the past in you. What happened to you in the past? And that could be a bottomless pit. And it's already happened. And a lot of it can be just speculative. Like, well, what happened there? Some of it is like trauma that happened to you before you could even formulate words for it. So even talking about it, it's just your sort of approximation about what happened. It's your label on what happened. It's not really dealing directly with emotions. And also, therapy can be a defense mechanism as a way of avoiding dealing with it. Because your trauma is like, well, I don't really want to deal with this, but I'm going to bullshit with all this talk about what's happening, and we're never actually going to get better.
Oh yeah, I think on that we could get into this again, but
We can get into
therapy.
this. Yeah.
I would love a therapy that provides a space where you can reanimate that past. You can relive it to practice dealing with it better. You know, initially it'll be hard, but I think increments of that would be great. A great therapy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not digressing. So, but yeah, that's a quote I really like that you said.
I think it's only an issue if, like, I think if it's really affecting you in the present, then yeah, maybe look into it. But I think sometimes if you're just sitting there, like, you're just a bit bored, it's like, why drag all that up again? You know, just put that energy into something else.
Depends, isn't it? Like I need a purpose. I need a sense of drive, something to move forward with, and the only thing holding me back is the fear of repeating the past. So once I get over that, then I can move forward more with.
But then, do you think that's like a defense mechanism though? Because you can be. I can speak to you in, like, when you're 80 and you're like, Paul, I'm gonna move forward when I get over this fear of, like, reliving the past.
I don't limit myself. You know, I don't put label and say, right, I must resolve it first. I'm speculating. That's the reason I lack the motivation right now. You know, and it's so low. I don't have the confidence and drive that I once did. When I got my diagnosis of lymphoma, I was on it. You know, I went extreme diet. I mean, I don't think many people can say they can do that. You know, to ignore advice from medical doctors. I'm quite proud of that in a sense. As much as it's crazy, I'm proud of the will and the drive that I had. Whereas I don't have that now.
Do you think if you had a different purpose, then you would get that drive back? Because it only took you having lymphoma to... Because that became your purpose almost. Right? That became the meaning.
Only. It's the question, isn't it? Did it only?
So do you think there was anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it drew up everything from my past. What I was afraid of.
You know, in, like, Fight Club, there's a... Have you seen that film, Fight Club? There was something he said in there. He said he was doing a speech to all his, like, Fight Club members, Tyler Durden, and he was saying, we have no Great War, we have no Great Depression. Our war is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives. So I think what he was saying in that is, he was saying that actually what they were finding in Fight Club was a sense of meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have, like, in the past generations, they had the war to give them purpose. They had, like, something societal, larger than themselves, that they can get involved with. Yeah. They had a depression they had to survive through. You know, when you're starving, you put aside your existential crisis and thinking about meaning. You're like, yeah, my meaning is to get my next fucking meal.
It's bear, it's primal, isn't it?
Yeah, it becomes primal. You just, like, if a bear's attacking you, my meaning is to, like, get away from this fucking bear will kill it or something, you know?
Play dead or whatever.
But when we're, like, in the comfortable now, like, living rooms, you know, comfortable lives, then we're like, ooh, what is the meaning of life?
Is it a man thing though, isn't it? Like, we're a masculine drive, should I say? Because, you know, someone might be watching this thinking, we don't care about that. Why are you two guys talking about it? Because you two guys care about it, but we don't.
Yeah, not everyone cares about it. I think it's some people have their meaning in their life. Some people like, okay, my meaning is to build a family. My meaning is to build a business. You know, Elon Musk, he's probably got bagloads of, you know, meaning in his life and purposes. You know, I want to put a man on the Mars. We need to escape this planet before it blows up. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's the passion of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so apart from quotes, any book recommendations you have? Just anything off the top of your head?
Yeah, there's a book, Sapiens.
Author?
Hard to pronounce, and I forget. And apologies to the author.
Should we Google it? Sapiens. Sapiens or Sapiens?
Yaakov.
Yuval Noah Harari.
Yes, there we go.
Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind.
Yes.
Sapiens or Sapiens?
I don't know. But for me, that is the best history book anybody could ever read.
Okay.
Because it's a good retrospective look on who we are, why we do certain things, you know, how children are born, for example, and, you know, genetics and things, how we communicate, why we are the way we are, the destruction we cause in the world as we go. You know.
He further argues that the ability of sapiens to cooperate in large numbers arises from its unique capacity to believe in things existing purely in the imagination, such as gods, nations, money, and human rights. He argues that these beliefs give rise to discrimination, whether that be racial, sexual, political, and it is potentially impossible to have completely unbiased society. Interesting, very interesting book. Harari claims that all large-scale human cooperation systems, including religions, political structures, trade networks, and legal institutions, owe their emergence to sapiens' distinct cognitive capacity for fiction. Accordingly, Harari regards money as a system of mutual trust and sees political and economic systems as more or less identical with religions. Interesting. That good summary of parts of the book.
Absolutely. Better than I described it.
Yeah, well, it's Wikipedia, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Wikipedia is usually boring and long and winded, but they've improved over the years, haven't they?
Yeah. Right, Steve, let's wrap this up. Thank you very much for doing this podcast with me. This is the first ever podcast, so we'll see how it turns out.
I'm honoured, thank you.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do some more in the future, more in depth on a certain subject.